Daniel Jeremiah here with us every Wednesday. How and why is this trade deadline different than it was in the 90s, the 2000s, when we were kicking around the NFL? The trade deadline was never a thing. It was never like, oh, I can't wait to watch this, and all these guys move. 6 receivers move, 6 D linemen move, an offensive tackle, a linebacker. Why is the trade deadline, DJ, now a thing when it really never wasn't even a decade ago?
I think there's something to the younger GMs. I think there's a little bit of a baseballization, a little bit in front offices. When you guys go back to your playing days, it was kind of just old school football people. The general managers, a lot of them had come through as either players or coaches and kind of were more traditional. Whereas I think now you see analytics get involved. There's less emotional ties. There's less like old school thought of this is our team. We go through training camp together. We go through the offseason together. We roll with this group. I think it's a little less emotional, and I think that's what baseball's been for quite some time. It's still, look, let's not get carried away. It wasn't like we saw, the big names in this league moving around, but there was activity where there used to be none. So I think from that standpoint, at least it makes it interesting.
Kind of like college football, a little just more transactional. Kind of like high school football.
Yeah. Could it also be like 53-man rosters, and now you have 15 guys on your practice squad? Or, in the old days, would we have 53-man roster and like 5 or 6 practice squad players? So now you feel, maybe we could move a veteran guy and bring up a young guy. Is maybe some of that in play too?
Yeah, I think, look, we have how many teams? We got 8 teams with 2 wins or something like that?
Too.
I mean, the bottom of the league's never been more populated, so you have teams more willing to sell, even though we have these extra playoff spots that they didn't have years ago. So I think that's part of it. You look around the league, and I'm sitting here going I don't know. Did any move happen? In baseball, you can make a trade that can really push you over the top, and we just saw that last year with the Dodgers. I don't know that anybody got pushed over the top based off anything we saw take place at the trade deadline.
What did the eye in the sky show Daniel Jeremiah with the Seahawks on Sunday?
Well, turnovers, red zone turnovers specifically. They're just a backbreaker, including one that goes the other way. I mean, it's rare. I mean, the pick six is still such a rare thing. It's a 14-point play when you're down in the red zone. That was brutal. I still don't know why we can't get snaps on a weekly basis. I feel like every time I watch the tape, there's 2 issues with shotgun snaps. And it looked like on tape you can't see that as clearly as you could on the TV copy, which I didn't see the TV copy, but it looked like it just whipped right through Geno's hands. I don't know what happened on those 2, but those are drive killers, man. So silly stuff like that. There's still, with the Geno experience, you still get a lot of good in there. There's a lot of big throws hanging in there. He's getting hit and delivers some nice balls to JSN in the middle of the field. But they're just back-breaking turnovers. I mean, that was the game.
As you watch and you dig in, and every Sunday you've got the Chargers and a nice win for Harbaugh and continue to move kind of their culture forward. And then obviously through all your scouting and all of the different tape that you watch, you have such a broader view than certainly we do here with our myopic lens just on the Seahawks. When you look at it globally in the league, do other teams have the challenge protecting their quarterback that the Seahawks are certainly having with Geno right now?
I think that challenge is all but maybe a handful of places. Just doing the draft every year, I see it. The league is getting an influx, disproportionate influx of defensive linemen versus offensive linemen. It's just where the talent has been. I think that probably there's a deeper level. Probably goes back to high school. I mean, you got a big athlete, and you're a big program. He's going to make more of an impact for your team on the defensive line than he is on the offensive line. They're just better players there. So I don't think it's a mystery. We've got one undefeated team in the NFL. Creed Humphrey is the best center in the NFL right now. Trey Smith, I think he's coming into the last year of his contract, who, make no mistake, I mean, he's listed as a 6th-round pick. That was a medical concern. He would have been a top 20 pick. He was that type of player coming out. He's probably going to be the highest paid guard in the NFL when he does his next deal. They paid Joe Thuney a ton of money to come over from the New England Patriots to man the other guard spot. I mean, these are home runs, and they're inside out, and the tackles have moved around and changed. there. I don't think they've had great tackle play in Kansas City with Mahomes. But I just think a lot of these great offenses, the way the game's played right now, they are so good in their interior three. There's just not many teams that have it. There's more teams than not that mirror what you're watching with the Seahawks every week.
Okay, so as you look at it, and it's been a big volume, especially over the last decade here. And I think your first answer right there on O-lines of the disproportionate number of D-linemen. I see it every week in college football too. There's more of those guys than there are difference-making offensive line. But if you were to pinpoint and just say, gosh, this has been one of the biggest challenge when it comes to O-line acquisition here for John and the personnel department in Seattle. Is there something you can put your finger on? Because outside of the left tackle that they got right with Okung, the left tackle that they got right with Charles Cross, I mean, those two look to be kind of bedrock guys. Okung did it for a long time, and Cross is going to get paid. Outside of that, it has been a revolving door at a lot of different spots. Is there anything you can put your finger on as to why such a challenge?
No, I mean, the one thing I can think of is just, at some point in time, do you swing on a huge ticket item in free agency on the interior of the offensive line? Do you use a first-round pick on an interior offensive line and try and take some big swings there? That's about it. Most teams do the same thing, which is you hope you hit on one of these mid-round picks. You go out and try and find maybe a reclamation project or a veteran, and you just kind of go with the thought of, and Dame, I'd love to hear your take on this, because a lot of times when you look at good offensive line, I used to always maintain I'd rather have 5 goods than one Hall of Famer, but then I've got a Where's Waldo at left guard that I know is going to get just abused every single week. So it's like you're as strong as your weakest link. I think those are some of the best offensive lines that you see.
Yeah, and just continuity, right? There's just something to be said about those guys working together, all that they have to do during the week with the game plan, all the
So
different
what's the best
protections.
O-line you ever play behind, Damon? The one in Kansas City?
Yeah, for sure. Will Shields, Brian Waters.
Yeah, Waters. Yeah.
These guys were dudes. Willie Rofe. We're talking Hall of Famers, 2 of those guys. And they're just so athletic, so competitive. Casey Wigman, even at center, just a smart guy. So, yeah. And you're right. I think we kind of bounced around a few different guys at right tackle, but that interior part of that whole line was as good as it gets. And
DJ, I don't want to speak for John Schneider, but we've been around him enough that I think he would say, hey, listen, I can't plug my nose and pay these guys this money. Like Damian Lewis at guard, we watched him for 4 years here in Seattle.
Yeah.
I can't plug my nose and go, well, I have to do this. I got to pay him $65 million. He's not a $65 million player. I watched Lloyd Cushenberry in Denver a lot. Can't pay him $60 million. But is there at some point where you do just have to plug your nose, even if you don't like the value, even though you think you're overpaying, that you just, because there simply is just not enough of these humans?
Yeah, and if you don't want to do that, then you're going to have to take them, in the first and second round. And the other part of it too is, forgive me for not knowing this because it's a new coaching staff, but you talk about continuity. I also I'll go to my grave saying outside of the head coach, I offensive line coach might be the most important hire that you make. That is a development position. Brock, you talk about not seeing as many quality guys. You see the same thing I do at the college level. The offensive line coach, you get a great offensive line coach and you have continuity where he stays there for a long time, where he knows what works in their system and what traits you have to have and what you can get by without. That is a huge advantage.
Well, you watch that, right, Damon, in New England, Scarnecchia?
Yeah, Dante Scarnecchia and Mike Solari, and been around some great O-line guys for sure. But I'll tell you, Scott Huff, this is his first crack at the NFL at it for sure. But this is a guy. He is one of the guys. He was a lineman himself, and obviously coming with Grubb, knows the system, and it's their first year. But Scott is such a great dude. These guys are going to run through the wall for him. He's just one of them. And I really believe he's going to be an outstanding professional offensive line coach for many, many years.
But there is an adjustment, right?
Of course.
We talked about that. For Grubb and Huff, the first time going from the college game for decades to this level where the humans are a little bit different. Hey, let's spin this a little bit to Geno, and then I have an epiphany question for you, DJ.
All right.
Geno Smith, over the halfway mark now. Right, I think we talked to you maybe when they were 3-0 about his value and his market value and everything else. Halfway mark right now. Has Geno helped himself with wanting a new deal after the season, or do you think he's hurt his market through 9 games?
Push, is that allowed? It feels almost like a push.
A push?
I just think the standard of what he can be and the level he can play at and that he's shown, he's not playing to that. So that tells you that that market is down. But then I also referenced all these 2-win teams, and I look at so many franchises that don't have a guy. And, it's easy to complain about having let's just throw a number out there, the 13th best quarterback in the NFL, and complain that he's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And there's those teams that are sitting there from 22 to 32 saying, I would kill to have the 13th quarterback, right now. So I don't think he's played his best football, but I think that the need is so great around the league right now, and I think the perception, at least at this point in time, as we sit November 6th, that this draft class is not going to provide a ton of starting quarterbacks, that's at least kept his market where it was.
Okay, let's spin it a little different way. Look at it through a little different lens or optics here. How many other quarterbacks in the league, because I'm with you, I think Geno's about in that spot, somewhere between the 10th and 15th best in this league. How many other quarterbacks are there in this league that could play behind this group right now that leads the league in pressures? I mean, these numbers, DJ, are just overwhelming. The sack rate, the time he has to throw, the hits, the hurries, the pressures, the sacks, it is as much duress as anybody is under. How many guys legitimately could come in here and play the position a whole lot differently than Geno has through 9 games?
Yeah, I think it mirrors closely the number that I just gave you. I think you could find 10 quarterbacks that would be marginally better. I don't think anybody's going to thrive under that type of pressure. But I can make a case that maybe, watching this tape this last week, I wrote down there was four or five plays where I wrote the word greedy. So some of that stuff is on him. Like some of that stuff, he's passing up completions and trying to be a little too greedy to get vertical down the field. So I do think there are some quarterbacks that can come in there and would be a little bit better than what he's been in this situation. I don't think anybody would come in there and thrive for the reasons that you mentioned, just the constant duress.
Did we see JSN take a huge step?
That was a big game. I wish he didn't have the ball pop up in the air on that one pick. But you saw him. This was the explosive stuff that you wanted to see. And I was thinking about it when I was watching it, because I was thinking back to our conversation and going back to my report on him coming out. And I was like, that was an Amon-Ra St. Brown game. Now the challenge is Amon-Ra gives you 10 to 12 of those games a year. So that's the next step. But man, positive step, absolutely.
So last thing here, DJ, looking at that, because there are certainly Seahawks fans, and you know this in every market. I need a quarterback. Geno's not our guy. I need a quarterback. In this draft class, is it just Cam and Shedeur, or do you see anybody else that would come in here and be a difference maker?
No, I think there's some fun project type guys, and I've got to do a ton more work on them. Yeah. But Jackson Dart looks like he'd be somebody that's fun to work with. Who kind of gave me like a Jake Delhomme type vibe. You know what I mean? Like just competitive, tough, feisty. He's got to clean up some stuff with his feet, and he's not just purely accurate. So you're going to gain in some areas with somebody like that, but you're going to lose in other areas compared to Geno. So that's kind of what this draft class looks like.
How surprised are you, Daniel, with Jaden in Washington? We all knew he was a great college football player, but I saw him early on here at Arizona State, and coming to Husky Stadium, kind of was a runaround guy early in his career, and just the accuracy and the long ball. And obviously Cliff Kingsbury, I think, is a big part of that. I don't know if he's getting enough credit that he deserves, but this guy might be the league MVP.
Yeah. He's been awesome. I thought he would be ahead of the other guys to start, just because he played so much more football than the rest of the, outside of Bo Nix. But he had played so much. I thought he would be, of Drake May and Caleb, I thought he would start out ahead of them. I did not think that not only ahead of them, he's darn near ahead of everybody else at the position in the league. He's playing at an elite level. And to see a rookie raise up everybody else around. This offensive line was not great when you looked at him personnel-wise. They did not have the pieces. He elevated the offensive line. You've got Terry McLaurin and then some other older pieces. He elevated that whole group. So much so that they traded for Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline because he's brought so much belief to that organization. It's incredible. It's incredible what he's done, and I think it's two things, the lessons that you learn from it. Number one is time is important. This guy's got to play a lot of football. It's tough to develop players in the NFL right now. This guy played a lot of football in college. That's number one. And number two, the overriding message I got from everybody at LSU who knew him and was around him was this guy is in the building at 5 a.m. every day. His work ethic is off the charts. And I think when you have somebody who's an athlete, somebody who's had time, and someone who works his tail off, you get some special things like what we're seeing right now.
That's pretty much what we get every Wednesday at 8:30. I mean, we get a special talent who puts the time in, the work, and elevates this show and everything that he does. DJ, you're the best, man. I really do appreciate it. I sent you that note last night, and you've been a big part of this fall for us, and we're halfway mark, and hopefully these Seahawks, after a bye week, can self-scout and find some answers and turn it around in the second half. But always appreciate the time.
By the way, I apologies to Salk, but man, that's tough for him to lose his job like that. But it is an upgrade. I'll tell you that. It's a nice upgrade. Wally Pitt Huard.
There he is, Daniel Jeremiah, every Wednesday with us. An absolute blast. Some fun conversation there with the QBs.